What if I told you that long ago there was an item that could instantly win the match for survivors? An item with no counterplay that made killers dodge lobbies, that the very act of equipping this item made you the killer's biggest priority over everything and everyone else. That item is the key. The key is one of the original items in Dead by Daylight, along with medkits, toolboxes, and maps. However, keys have always been one of, if not the most overpowered items in Dead by Daylight's history. Stronger than even the old brand new part. So then, what does the key do exactly? It does two things. One is that depending on the add-ons used, it will reveal auras of other players like the survivors and the killer. Sort of like the opposite of the map. Then, its much more notorious and evil ability to instantly open up the hatch at any point. But before we get into all that, let's talk about the hatch first, as that is as big of an issue as keys were. Keys and the hatch were partners in crime as the evil duo that could make any killer instantly lose a game with the push of a button. Hatches originally worked that depending on the survivors in the match, or however many generators were done, then the hatch would spawn. Meaning that in the old days of Dead by Daylight, if you did not do 2 of the 5 generators, then the hatch would not spawn. That's right, if you didn't play well enough, or didn't focus on gens enough back then, the hatch wouldn't spawn, and you either just have to give up and go to a hook, or just somehow try and fix 1 or 2 generators all by yourself. This was obviously a huge issue for players at the time, and was later fixed so that the hatch would always spawn when one survivor was left alive. But before then, if your team didn't do good enough, you didn't even deserve the hatch. Then it used to work that when there was only 1 generator left, the hatch would spawn, but wouldn't be open. And this is the smoking gun, the root of all the issues. This was intended, well I think it was, to be that when there was only a few survivors left alive, that they would be able to see the hatch and plan where to go when they needed the hatch to escape. With how Dead by Daylight is now, the hatch will only appear when 1 survivor is left, so that survivors just have to get lucky at finding it in order to escape at the end. Hatches were a huge issue back in the day, and led to what was known as a hatch standoff, where survivors could get grabbed during the jumping in animation, but the killer could not close the hatch. So what it would result in 9 out of 10 times is the killer would find the hatch early and sit AFK on top of it for what could literally be forever, until either the killer or the survivor decides to make a move. This was one of the worst things in the game, so most of the time a killer would just give up the hatch instead of having to wait upwards of 5+ minutes at a time, just standing there, waiting for the survivor to make an attempt to jump in. But I've talked enough about the other villain in this duo, so let's get back to the true culprit. Keys worked as you would expect, and that was you could unlock the hatch early and open it, allowing you to instantly escape the match and allow other survivors to escape with you, since the hatch would stay open for a set period of time. With the literal push of a button, a survivor could skip a whole generator, going to an exit gate and unlocking it and running out. This was, to say at the very least, broken beyond belief. The very act of seeing a survivor holding a key in the lobby was the same as committing a war crime. It sent killers into DEFCON 1 and needed to tunnel the survivor out of the match. But I'm not done yet, that's not all they do. Once the killer was granted the ability to close the hatch, they for some reason gave the key the most sinister ability I think behavior has ever created. So around the time the hatches could be closed, the endgame collapse was introduced, which is still one of the best things behavior has implemented, honestly. So when the killer would find the hatch and close it, the endgame collapse would instantly start.
What the fuck were they thinking?
The very act of closing a hatch would complete the final generator and start the endgame collapse. Not just power the exit gates, but start the endgame collapse. So the other 3 survivors in the match now had 2 minutes to get out. I genuinely am baffled to this day why they thought that was a decent or even an acceptable choice for the game. The key functioned as both an old brand new part that would instantly complete a generator and would instantly allow a survivor to escape the match, or even the whole team since the hatch was left open for a while. That meant all the other survivors could just jump in if the killer wasn't right there to close the hatch. With that, the match would instantly be over with nothing that the killer could do. This is why equipping a key was considered a crime. Most of the time, people who ran keys didn't even use its ore reading potential at all, and would just equip the add-ons that made your item stay with you even if you used it on the hatch or if you lost it in the trial, because they wanted that much cheese. So now to recap, all the survivors would need to do is complete 4 out of the 5 generators and then the hatch would appear. Then all the survivor would have to do is run up to the hatch and push a single button and they would instantly escape with nothing the killer could do to counter it. Once the killer closed the hatch, because they don't want everyone to instantly escape, the final generator would instantly be completed and all the other survivors could escape through the exit gates, so the killer got punished for closing the instant escape option. I genuinely cannot think of a single instance where this was either balanced or even acceptable for the game. So now, what you might be thinking is, there must be a way to counter it, right? Well, about that, there was nothing the killer could do to counter it. Zilch, nada, zero, none, nothing. You might think to bring Franklin's Demise, right? The perk that made it so that survivors will drop their item when you hit them and it will lose charges. Before patch 5.1.0, the keys did not require any charges on them to open the hatch, so even with a fully depleted key, they could still walk up to the hatch and open it at any time. Even if you did then tunnel them out of the match, there still is the fact that when a survivor dies with an item, it will drop on the ground in front of the hook. So another survivor could just walk up to the hook and pick up the key, and now they're your biggest priority. Then there's also the fact that survivor switching still existed. So if you thought you were going to play a nice casual match, all 4 of the survivors could instantly switch to an entirely different loadout with just the push of a button and bring keys, toolboxes, medkits, etc. There truly was no counterplay to keys whatsoever, and the only real way to beat keys was to sweat as hard as possible to kill the survivor and then focus on whoever picked it up next. Then there's still the fact that mid-match a survivor could plunder a purple or red key from a chest, and then boom, they now have an instant win ability as soon as they hit 1 generator left. Now you can see why killers would dodge lobbies with keys in them when you saw someone holding it. And speaking of someone holding a key, let's play a game. One of these Leons is holding the broken key and the other 2 are holding a dull and red skeleton key. Can you tell who's holding the broken key? I'll give you a moment. Leave which Leon you think it is in the comments below. You have your answer locked in yet? Here it is! That's right, you can't even tell! This was another issue with keys, and that was the fact that broken keys, which in their model show no teeth on them and it was just a broken handle, still have the exact same model as the skeleton and dull keys. This would lead to survivors bringing broken keys just to taunt and get chased the whole match, as killers genuinely couldn't take the risk of it being a real key. I myself had times where I'd tunnel someone that was holding a broken key and didn't even know it until we go to the post-game screen and just see it was a normal green key with no add-on. But I couldn't take the risk, I had to tunnel them or I'd instantly lose the game. Luckily though, over time, the hatch has been fixed and reworked into a very good spot that it is now. But keys barely have gotten any nerfs or reworks to compensate for this, with the only change they've gotten being that a depleted key can no longer open up the hatch, which is a huge improvement. But still means that if a survivor manages to pick up the key with 1 charge remaining, they still have the key ready to escape whenever they want. Eventually, they made it so that it takes 2.5 seconds in order to open up the hatch, but that's still a short amount of time considering what you get out of it, and that if a killer hits you and you use that speed boost to get to the hatch, there's basically nothing that the killer can do. Despite the fact that the hatch is only half of the key's power, nobody ever uses the key for its other purpose of aura reading. I honestly would love to see an item rework with keys that makes them more suitable for their other add-on. Stuff that lets you see injured survivors' auras, see further auras, etc, etc. Something to make them worth using again. In conclusion, keys went from one of, if not the most overpowered items in all of Dead by Daylight's history, to becoming one of Dead by Daylight's most forgotten items. Almost as if keys themselves were tossed down the hatch, never to be seen again. And with that, it's your boy, Donut Boy, signing off. Take care of yourselves and have a damn good one. Peace.